Alleluia. 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 The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said to his disciples, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He takes away every branch in me that does not bear fruit, and every one that does he prunes, so that it bears more fruit. You are already pruned because of the word that I spoke to you. Remain in me, as I remain in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit on its own unless it remains on the vine, so neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit, because without me you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me will be thrown out like a branch and wither. People will gather them and throw them into a fire, and they will be burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask for whatever you want, and it will be done for you. By this is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. The Gospel of the Lord. Today is the feast of Saint Damien of Molokai, or Saint Damien the Leper. Saint Damien is he's pretty famous in our nation as a part of our nation's history because there's actually a statue of him at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. When Hawaii became a state as an official part of the Union, they had placed two statues of Hawaiian heroes in the national capital. One of them was one of the Hawaiian kings, and the other one is Saint Damien of Molokai. He also got some publicity a couple of years ago because there was a very progressive Democratic congressperson who basically said that his statue should be taken out of the Capitol because it was one of the many examples of white supremacy and colonialism. And anybody who knows the story of Saint Damien knows that that is ridiculous to say such a thing. The people of Hawaii themselves wanted his statue in the Capitol. And it's because he was the opposite of a white supremacist and a colonialist. St. Damien was a missionary priest, and his order was looking for people to go and serve in the leper colony, right, in Hawaii. So in those days before there was any cure for leprosy, right, even if you just had the slightest sign of leprosy, there's various forms of it, right? Some are more extreme than others. But in those days in Hawaii, if you had the slightest form of leprosy or if you were suspected, you were sent to the island of Molokai, and you were never allowed to leave. And so it basically became a literal hellhole, right, in Hawaii. People will literally go there to die. Alcoholism was rampant, sexual promiscuity, lack of sufficient medical help and assistance, and all sorts of things. And so St. Damien's order was looking to send a priest to that island colony, and St. Damien volunteered to go. There's so many books written about him. There's even some movies written about him that would be well worth your read or your watching. Very inspiring story. After over 10 years of service there in the island, St. Damien himself contracted leprosy, and that was eventually what killed him. He died in his late 40s, so at a very young age. So St. Damien, you might say, was kind of like in his age, he was kind of like his age's Mother Teresa. If only we had social media and all those things back then, he would have been an international hero. He didn't have the advantage that Mother Teresa had of people coming from all over the world to see him and record him and all those different things, but an absolute hero. One of the other things that's really beautiful about what St. Damien did when he went to that island is not only did he celebrate Mass and the sacraments, which were, of course, were very necessary, but St. Damien recognized that what the people lacked more than anything else, besides the faith, right, the fact that they needed the consoling faith of the church, was that they suffered from extreme despair and hopelessness. Since they were going there to die, like I said, alcoholism was rampant. There was no education, etc., etc. And so St. Damien spent much of his time not simply performing the spiritual works of mercy with the sacraments and other things, but performing the corporal works of mercy. He taught them how to build churches and schools. And he taught them how to build coffins so that people could be buried in a dignified way. He started choirs so that people could be inspired by the beauty of music and find ways to be uplifted, even on that terrible and dark island. And this is what happens in the history of many different missionaries in the church, and something that is often overlooked. Again, in our modern culture, so many people have this idea that people came from Europe and they just came and oppressed the native peoples, which of course happened in some occasions. But wherever missionaries were present, they brought beauty, they brought education, they brought music, they brought the faith, they brought all sorts of things that lifted up the people's spirits. A great example of this, you might have seen the movie The Mission. The Mission portrays this really well. It's about the Jesuit missionaries in South America. And the movie portrays it so beautifully, how the missionaries, you'll see them walking through the jungle where there's no buildings or houses really, and then all of a sudden you open up into the Jesuit colony, and there's these huge cathedrals and huge schools that the missionaries themselves taught the people how to build. All of a sudden, in the midst of an immense wilderness, you see this vast and beautiful and developed civilization. And it was because of the inspiration of these missionaries, who were not making any money off those people or anything else. They were simply priests who learned how to build and to teach and to educate for the sole purpose of lifting up the souls of those people who were there. And St. Damien is one of those examples. The life of St. Damien is very inspiring and should also be impactful to each of us. One of the things that Mother Teresa used to say in her ministry when people would come and visit her is she would say, you need to find your own Calcutta. Not everybody needs to come here to my Calcutta and serve with me. You need to find your own Calcutta. Who are the people who are deeply suffering in your neighborhood, in your town? And not just suffering from material poverty, but even more significantly, the spiritual poverty, a lack of hope, a lack of faith, a lack of joy and fulfillment in their lives. Who are those people? And how can we be another St. Damien to them, or another Mother Teresa to them?